Welcome back to the Blue Chip Academy podcast, the Blueprint to Success interview series, providing unique blueprints, tactical knowledge, best practices to navigate the critical points in the elite sports ecosystem so athletes and parents can prepare a plan to a career path that any athlete can bank on. Our next guest, former Pitt soccer goalie and Gateway standout, who is currently sports medicine physician and assistant professor at Nova Southeastern University. Let's welcome Dr. Lailah Issac. How you doing, Lailah?
No, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, man. Thanks for jumping on. Just jumping into the whole thing, trying to give some codes to the youngsters coming up, going through the recruiting process, and families as they're going through, right? Not only looking at whether it's professional sports or whatever their sports path is, but, they're having that goal outside of sports to use sports as a catalyst to a career that they can bank on. So when we jump into it, we talk about sports and using it as a catalyst and intentional steps and plans needed to make it happen. Looking back on your college selection process, is there anything that you would identify or highlight that was very keen on, I guess, your process? Or one thing to consider, one thing to consider, what would it be going through the college selection process?
Yeah, I think looking at more than just the sport. I know it's easy to say kind of looking at it now versus going through it. So the sport is important, obviously, and want, opportunities to play, the culture around the sports, but just looking at the supporting environment with the sport and then outside of the sport too. So if you have an interest of something academically, then seeing what that availability is, just in case that's an interest later on, or that's the route that you go, but then also just a support system around the sport that you're playing and kind of that environment of that culture in that sport, I think is important to factor in addition to location and other things like that. But that's something, hey, if I'm going to be here, then seeing what else about that environment is helpful.
That's important because we talk about that all the time. Like there's the football culture or the culture within the sport that you play at the school. And then it's almost like the relation to that sport at the school, the culture in which like the normal student body views that student athlete and just different things of like what you're used to, right? You talk to athletes that maybe come from the Northeast and take a scholarship offer at New Mexico State because they thought X, Y, and Z, and just understanding that the culture is not the same outside of the football building, right? And it's like, I don't like Mexican food or whatever the case may be. I don't like this culture. Or you see it from guys. I mean, we've seen it sometimes from recruit players from Florida, and they come up to Central Pennsylvania, and it's like, it was cool on the weekend, but and sometimes you want to set yourself up for success because when we talk about giving the keys to the process and a lot of things is putting like having leverage for your path, right? Like setting yourself up. So I think that's important to understanding the criteria which you're selecting your school for outside of the sport, for that matter.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about your recruiting and college selection process. How was it?
It was fair, I should say. I think going into junior year of high school is when I was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I will play soccer. And in college, I was indifferent. I was enjoying playing the sport and just enjoying trying to get better all the time. And I really loved it. I loved the other sports I played. But when it came to the recruiting part of it, it was thinking, hey, I want to go far away from Pittsburgh, was my initial thought. I don't know why, but I said, let me go far away. Let's check what that's like out there. But then actually, as far as for being contacted by people, that was more within Pennsylvania and then in Pittsburgh. So not as much outside of there. So in looking at that process was navigating really just with my family. I don't know that I had as much for soccer anyway, as much, hey, do this or look at this going along. So it wasn't, had some opportunities to play at various colleges, thinking about Division 1, 2, and 3. I was kind of, okay, well, what's out there for those. So had an opportunity to be away from Pittsburgh and at a HBCU, and it was more financially that it felt like, I'll be out of state. It's not going to be a full scholarship. What does that look like versus other opportunities of being closer to home, even if it's not a scholarship or a full scholarship? What does that look like? So, why I say fair was it also was, being recruited, but then also recruited with not always funds behind it.
Gotcha.
So that was a challenge, but through that process with my family and kind of seeing what was the best for my situation, and what I was looking for, it ended up being working well.
That's a good answer. That's interesting when you say it was fair, because like when they were probably recruiting you, it's like, we want you, but you know, if you still have to pay or there's funds here are not available, it's like, okay, there has to be a real conversation there about where you fit in the program and different things of that nature. Mm-hmm. So we had a former guest, Amobi, and he played soccer, and he talked about like his club team kind of handling a lot of his recruiting process and different things of that nature. How was that? Did you play in a club soccer sport, and how much did they impact the recruiting process at all in terms of exposure, or was it more the high school?
Yeah, so I played club. I did play club. So high school was, during the fall season, club all the rest of the year around for there. And I played with a couple club teams. And that was very crucial in my development as not just a soccer player, but particularly as a goalkeeper. For that, people just get kind of, hey, you be the goalie, like just trying stuff out. And then after going to a camp that one of the coaches mentioned, that was really solidifying, like, oh, I really like this position and playing this position, and saw that I can actually play well in this position. So the club really helped develop those skills and the opportunity to play at a higher level. Although I feel like, we were pretty competitive at Gateway for our soccer team. But that really helped travel and play people out of the state, play people out of just Pittsburgh, and have that was really important to my development as a player, for sure, and my confidence with that too.
That's good. I mean, that's interesting and validating to hear that you gain confidence and development from the club sports, because I like it from just the talent acquisition process, because it narrows down your pool. You got good and good throughout the year and different things of that nature. And a lot of times those sports, there's a barrier entry to play in the club team, whether it's money, whether it's commitment. Mm-hmm. You got to get there, and it's not just at the school. You got to do here. You placate to the process. So you have typically serious athletes, and you can identify just the talent acquisition and kind of the projection a little bit more than sometimes. I mean, I say football, for example, like it's coming a little bit with 7-on-7, even though there's different arguments if people like it or not. AAU circuit and basketball is another one, but I always volleyball, soccer. I mean, tennis, all the different sports. Just interesting on the talent acquisition and just the development process moving up. So when you're going through that and you talked about feeling more confident, was it because of the talent level you were playing against in the club sports?
It was because seeing just the different talent from really when we went into different states for that, seeing that, oh, wow, these soccer players, we may just be as good as them, but they are taller. They are just look like they've been in the weight room. Like, it was different. So then being able to compete against that and doing well, I'm like, hold on, I stopped that shot. I can do this. Wait a second. It's still being a goalie. I mean, She might tower over me even at my stature, but hold on a second. So it was being in those positions where you then were kind of forced in a sense of, you're on the team. This is part of that travel. It's part of it, and competing at this high level. So then kind of sometimes surprising yourself, or then just being, again, confident or playing around other people on your even team that kind of, built me up in that way, and vice versa for me with them. So I think that was, and that repetitiveness and the seriousness of it. Hey, like, we're not out here just to get exercise. Like, we do want to win. If we're in a tournament, we're keeping score. Like, this is happening for that. So that part of it was awesome in that sense. No,
you're building up like just the baseline, I guess, competitive stamina in individuals. Like, that's what I love about just the club sports or running track, like just getting exposed, right? Because when you come up in football, it's always, football, basketball, you always get told percentages. So like everywhere I used to go, I was always like, all right, I'm the top 1% in this percentage. What about this percentage? And like my dad, Terry Smith, shout out to him. He was always on I don't care about Pittsburgh. I don't care about the East Coast country. So like everything was about exposure and getting the country. Go to a camp, you're in top of 2% here. So it's just interesting when other sports kind of construct that within and how much it goes, and I think, to the development of those athletes that get out and have that exposure. and see what they can do and raise that level of efficacy to kind of push through. And it kind of pushes people out of the sport, right? Because you're in it and it's like, oh, I don't think I love it like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there are plenty of sport.
Right.
Like gymnastics, I was pushed out of that quickly because it's like my level's here, my mom's paying this amount of money, and I'm just kind of hanging out at the gym.
Which sport was that for you?
What's that?
Which sport was that for you?
Gymnastics. Like I really enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. And that was, I will tell you, that was like one of the best sports for a general foundation in sports in general, for balance, flexibility, strength, power, discipline, all of those things. But man, it got to a certain time. I was like, I've competed. I'm good. I was like, why are we paying? Why are we going 5 days a week for 3 hours and you're using that study hall?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No. So, but it was an awesome sport. But to your point, that's what it, like, that was pushed out. Now, I will say also my skill level wasn't all the way up there, but the passion for it, plus the skill level, plus the time that, that kind of was just like, okay, let's move along. That's not it.
Did you have that moment when you were like, all right, I'm playing in college? Like, do you remember that moment when that was?
I think it was kind of multiple moments, not one moment, but multiple moments over kind of our having success in the high school level and on club teams, more so at high school, as being like, okay, consistently being able to finish first in the section and then being competitive in the whip field, and then just kind of the individual stats of feeling like, okay, maybe I can do this. And then it was like, all right, yes, well, if I'm doing this, I'm doing it. It's not, can I, do I want to?
So it wasn't like an initial goal, like I want to go to college. I'm throwing these things to go to college to play soccer. It was like, okay, I think I'm getting more serious.
It was more that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was the first or the second? First or last?
Oh, sorry. It was more of, I think I want to, after someone has put that in my ear, that potentially that is a possibility.
Okay.
I think I was just focused on like every sport that I played and just really enjoying and being the best that I could at it, that when it got to that time that, hey, there's a step after high school, and that's, if going to college for academic, for sport, whatever, like that's a possibility to still be playing a sport.
Right.
And that's, sports were like a crucial part of my life.
Yeah.
That's when someone, I don't even remember who, but when someone like, oh, have you thought about playing in college? I was like, oh, actually I hadn't, but hold on a second. And then it was kind of like, okay, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still training hard. I still want to be better at everything I'm doing. But what does that mean? Like, who do I need to talk to? What is even the process of this? Nobody else in my direct family played a sport in college. Like what does that mean? Or at least in my age level at that time.
Yeah. Like that self-discovery is always important. I mean, just interesting to me from the standpoint of like how people get to their plans and where they're going. Because for me, example, I think I made up my mind like 7th grade was like, all right, I want to do football like for real. And so with that, I loved other sports. So it was like my dad crafted, we're running track for this because, top percent has to run this fast. So we're going to play basketball for quickness and and then football. So whatever the case may be, and I broke my ankle in 9th grade playing basketball. And we're just like, or football, missed basketball. And we're just like, all right, we need to focus on speed and football. So like that, getting into the specialized aspect when you see like, all right, the writing's on the wall, this is the way we want to go, and different things of that nature. So when you had, like, did you always know you wanted to practice medicine? Like when you were going through the process, or?
I didn't. I knew that I liked science and math. I didn't know what direction that was going to lead me. I didn't really know that until college was when that kind of, as far as for the medicine aspect of it. So I just knew that I liked science and math. I was going to go to college and major in something related to a STEM, type of category.
Yeah.
The extent that I knew.
Yeah, because like we said, it was just athletes in general. It's always interesting hearing through the process, like what they're interested in and how they're going about it. Because I know when I was coming up, there was a kid, Myron Roll. He's a doctor now, and coming out, we were at a camp, and we're like, everybody's, the reporters were coming around, like, what do you want to study? He's like, I want to be a neurologist or whatever the case may be. I was like, what? Like, how you
That's
gonna
awesome.
like how you gonna do that? I mean, he was like a top recruit and everything, and he ended up doing it. But I went through and when I worked in the college space, sometimes athletes are discouraged from going to that path, not necessarily at Penn State, but other schools. It's just in terms of time. Do you have any suggestions for athletes that may be interested in medicine and like get discouraged from coaches or quote unquote, adults about
Yes,
what they
adults
should?
in general.
Yeah.
I feel like oftentimes people speak from a place of discouragement because maybe, there's some percentage of people that have tried it and weren't able to do it. Then a percentage that just, hey, it sounds like that will be hard versus actually knowing that. So I think my advice is more like if there is passion behind wanting to do medicine and play a sport, like that is possible. For people that are saying, hey, you can't do it, one, what is it that you can't do? Like, why are you saying that? Is it time? Is you think I'm not qualified enough? Like, what actually is it? And maybe not even going through that process, maybe more saying, okay, they said I can't, but what is it that actually I can do? Like, what does it mean? Okay, if I want to be a doctor, not thinking of, okay, I want to surgeon, how can I fit in surgery while I'm playing football? Like, that's not, yeah, that the time frame is not actually the same time. It's more, okay, if I want to be a surgeon, if I want to be a sports medicine doc, I know I have to go to do fellowship or residency. I know I have to go to medical school. I know I have to go to college. If I'm going to college, what does that mean to actually get to a place that I would be considered to even go to medical school so I can go to residency so that I can be a surgeon? So what I can focus on right now is my grades. Like I have to have grades to actually get into college, first of all, to maintain being a student athlete. And then also, once I'm in college, what does that look like for making sure that I'm then supported and surrounded by people that, hey, maybe I'm going to be a doctor 10 years after I'm done playing football after a sport. I still need to prepare for it.
Right.
So it's not harmful to get that information that's needed and surround yourself with those same type of people or those professions to actually go that way. So again, sorry, that was a long-winded answer to say that, to sum it up, that don't be discouraged by that. Like if your goal is, hey, I want to do this because I want to do this, not because, hey, it's going to make a lot of money, or hey, because I want this, or whatever the reasons, then someone saying that you can't may not necessarily know what it takes to do that thing that they're saying that you can't do.
So with that being said, like sometimes I love that answer because sometimes the level of exposure and just information lets people kind of put things in frame. So if we like scale a little bit, what would that blueprint look like? Say I want to practice medicine. I'm gonna go to college. I'm gonna graduate. And I'm gonna play 5-6 years in the NFL. Obviously, you do well in college. What does that look like post NFL or while you're playing to get ready to go back into medicine? Is that like you have to start taking classes to get back into med school? Like, what's that gap if you're, I guess, serious in football? Because if you're not practicing medicine for 5-6 years,
right?
Yeah.
So I think having in the undergraduate realm, there's certain requirements that are necessary to even apply for medical school.
Gotcha.
You don't have to have a certain major, but you have to have those other requirements for that.
Okay.
If that's something that can be done while in college for some of those, or a summer class, like the more that you can get to it, if you're not going to have all of the requirements prior to, graduating or leaving school at that time, then it's a good idea to at least know what those classes are. So maybe that during a summer class or during a summer course can take those things. But if you don't know, then later it's then, yes, going back to do those, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But it's maybe that much more that, okay, this chemistry and organic chemistry is going to be a little more challenging 5 years or 10 years outside of being from in school versus when it was during that time. So I think knowing what those prerequisites are for medical school in general, and it doesn't hurt to ever just know that information, and use the support that you have in college for academic advising, because that's a time when you're supported. You're kind of in a bubble, but about to be in real life, that you can have that information. The other thing that I would say is, the cool thing about, again, being a student athlete, and hopefully that you don't get hurt,
Right.
but you do have access to physicians and athletic trainers and people that like already that are just there and part of the team. Pick their brain about how they got to where they are. If you happen to get injured, learn a little bit about that injury. Like,
Right.
again, you might be focusing on, and that's understandable, I want to get back on the field, obviously. But as they're explaining something to you and your information about what your injury is, like, and you're interested in that, then kind of run with that too. Like, that's a cool opportunity to actually like be in a room with a doc that, hey, maybe I want to do that one day. And that's like an inside scoop that you kind of already have. And like, can you support me in this? Can you direct me in this, like, type of thing? And even if it's down the road, you've made that connection.
That's 100% a critical factor. And that's why I think you see a lot of, football players from the standpoint of realizing that critical view post-career and getting into orthopedic sales, or like me, I transitioned into physical therapy sales to an extent. And because I was comfortable speaking with the physical therapists, orthopedic surgeons, probably more so than your typical 26-year-old, right? Based on the injuries and everything that you said. And I'm happy that you said, like, having a plan of what the courses that you need to take to go, because there's a level of a boogeyman to a level to certain professions, right? Where it's like, oh, what does this person do? Or what's that? Whether it's a team doctor or chief marketing officer for a team or the president, and just really showing the information or the tactical steps to empower the student athletes. Like, if that's something that you want to do, like, well, here are the steps. Because a lot of it is like, I know if I wasn't sure I wanted to go, like, if I wasn't sure on the fence if I wanted to practice medicine and going through the process, I would be pretty intimidated talking to doctors, right? Like, if I was always told, like, you can't do that, I'm like, hey, because like a lot of times the doctors refer to you, like, operate like that around athletes, not all of them, but some, where it's just like, you're hurt, this is that, kind of cold, work for the team, different things of that nature. But I love that you gave those tactical steps that someone can just start brainstorming, because that information, that's empowering. And that's what gives people the confidence to, like, try it, and the exposure to see, like, oh, this is something that I'm really interested in.
And one other thing, if I could say, is also when you're again, it feels like there's so much, like, it's sport. I need to study my sport. I need to be a sport. And that's very important. But there are, speaking with your academic advisor, academic athletic advisor, or just your general academic advisor that's not even associated with your sport, depending on that level, is something else to look into. Are there pre-medical organizations or other things that other students are in that they don't have to know anything except for that, hey, as a pre-medical organization, we're doing this. We're going to have these speakers come in. We're going to offer these opportunities to be in an anatomy lab, like, just exposing self, like you said, to those opportunities to be in where other spaces are doing. And at the end of it, you're like, hey, I went through that. I went in that pre-medical club. I didn't like anything they were doing. I actually don't want to do medicine. Then you've actually helped yourself realize that on your own, right, versus I can't do this. But putting yourself in the situation, even with other students, it can be intimidating to talk to other docs. But in a setting that they're like, yep, we're having a doc come to talk to this group about this because everybody in this group wants to be a doctor, then just plop yourself in that. And it might not be the opportune time, might be a Saturday or Friday,
That's what we talk about with the committing at the club sports. Like, you got to do stuff when it's a little inconvenient if you want to really make something out of the sports ecosystem. That's just, that's barrier of entry. That's why we don't really talk about grade point averages here or the credits that you need to get into college. It's like, no, we got to, some people need to make sure that you, the bare minimum to get in, but what we're focusing on is using all these things as a launching pad. So we have to have that end destination to an extent. And, we all kind of went through that process. And so it's like, nah, let's get into the weeds a little bit more. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you gave great insight on what you should do as an athlete going there. So how was it for you at Pitt when you transitioned there? You're in chemistry, managing between your schedule, the labs, and practice.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely a puzzle, to try to fit around the labs. I quickly understood freshman year why that was kind of, hey, in the fall, that's not the time to load your credits. That's your main season. Like, yes, you're practicing the whole time, but that's not the time to try to do 3 labs to do 17 credits. it may be that, okay, I may need to space this out. There may be some summer classes involved. So it was a lot of support and guidance with my academic, within the science, College of Science that I was in, but then also the athletic academic support too, and saying, hey, this is what we're used to seeing, and seeing where I could actually fit that in, what that would mean from freshman year to beyond. So fitting in puzzles like with labs, with travel time. We'd be gone from Thursday to Saturday or Thursday to Sunday. So being able to fit in, making sure that we had courses that were around that time, or that classes that didn't require difficulty to make up being gone. So labs, I didn't schedule labs Thursday or Friday because that would often be the time we're traveling. So it doesn't make sense to miss those labs. So it was challenging, but I will say seeking out, again, having the support that was there, but then seeking out, what does this, again, look like for there? There are some long days, some tiring times. There are, leaning on classmates in the sense of learning to communicate with them. If you're in a group project with things, or things that with labs, that was all development. And this is not what I typically would do. I like to do these things on my own, but, oh, hey, maybe it is kind of that assistance with, okay, I'll do this part of the lab, you do this part of it, so that we can both get it done together, and go from there. So it was making sure to optimize any time for study, like study hall, study tables are required time. Like I want to socialize too. And there's some socialization happening, but like, let me get like a solid like hour of focus time, maybe then socialize and come back. But like finding ways to optimize the times that you're not expected to be in sport, but still can have some, life of not being in a hole. Some of my teammates might say that, man, like we never saw you because you were studying, and which was the case. And there were some times I could break, but optimizing those times to do the very best that you can in the academic setting while you're in the academic setting. And then transitioning to, while I'm in the weight room, I'm doing the best I can. While I'm in the weight room, while I'm in practice, I'm doing the best I can. I can't do anything about lab when I'm in practice. I can't do anything about practice when I'm in chemistry lab. So making sure to just be there and do the best you can so you can learn those things. But and on away trips, there was like, man, there were some times like, okay, just gonna have to do a little bit of homework and a little bit of studying. And it's different. My experience and my sport was a little different than it may be for football, or for, different sports and where they were and their positions and roles on the team. So I will make that caveat that it may be a little, have been a little different, but it's making sure that where there was time, and I made sure that I was studying, if this is what I'm going to do, that I'm studying, or getting my work done that I need to. If I have to go to office hours, like I don't want to email and go to office hours, but like that's going to be what it takes. So otherwise it isn't going to happen. So that's what I would say, the support, and just there's some sacrifices along the way for sure.
100%. It's like we always talk about time management a lot, but it's really focus management. It's like when you're focusing on what you're doing, and then like you said, the time is the time. Like you're going to be in study hall, you're going to be in lab, you're going to be at practice, you're going to be here. Focus. So like that's like the key point to it. When you were there, obviously you had a jumbled puzzle schedule. Did you have a welcome to college moment where you were like, oh shit, like this is college for real?
So a welcome to
like college soccer moment.
The sport, or welcome to
sport, like the sport.
Got it. Yep, there was a welcome to sport that came on fast and in a hurry, and during preseason, doubles, actually triples. It felt like, because we had doubles in the fall, so double the training. But then as a goalkeeper, myself and my other roommate, who was also the other goalkeeper, we had 3. So we had a whole nother practice before actual team practice. So that was like, that's why they give us that thick manual in preseason in the summer to run and to train, because this is when it happened. So that was my time of doing beep tests, doing 300s, doing all this running. That was just, I was not prepared for, and doing it in the heat, in the summer, at a high level, someone yelling in your ear, being like, you're slow. Like,
Right.
I thought I was somewhat fast, not anymore. And the weight room, like, I can remember a time laying on one of the fields at Pitt in the back where we used to practice. Like, what did I get into? What did I get into
No,
for sport?
that's
But,
that's amazing. So like you didn't feel prepared? Did you feel prepared?
so I will say I felt prepared for like the actual like soccer part of it, but the conditioning part of it and the weight part of it, I was like, I didn't know it was this level of doing that. It wasn't something that as soccer in high school that I did much weight training for, or that, my conditioning, we had conditioning, but it wasn't like you have to make this time to do it. So I thought I was okay. And then when I got there, and I didn't feel prepared.
I mean, I talk about all the time when here, like when going through the process, we talk about making these business decisions and making sure that you're evaluating the schools and their proper departments. And the weight room is always one that I'm trying to tell guys, families, that you really need to pay attention to and evaluate, because one, they're pushing you to your competitive max, right? Your emotional max. So like you got to understand if you link and can trust that person going through it, and then they're pushing your body in like a transformational time to where it's like, like it's hard, because that was like one of the transitions for me. I got to Penn State 170 pounds, and it's like, okay, I can run, we can do the running and stuff. And even those runnings were hard, but the weight room and all that stuff and like the different lifts, like that's always interesting to hear. That's the welcome to college sports, because high school's running around, have some fun, and it's like, man, get in this weight room. Nah,
Like,
that
oh,
was awesome.
this is no longer optional. Like, you're gonna be in here and you're gonna doing this.
Then you realize it too when you're there and you start competing. Because I mean, I noticed it quick. We played Florida State my freshman year, and I was playing off. I mean, we were getting hit. They had like 7 first-round draft picks, and it was just a physical game. It was like, all right, this is why you need to be in the weight room all the time, because just in terms of keeping your body strong. Like and realized that getting to NFL, you always think about injuries happening, but like, all right, you need to be strong. Like, I need to strengthen this, need to strengthen that. And you start realizing like, okay, you work out to make your body feel together as you kept going higher in sports. At least for me, found out too late, but it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. And I've grown to enjoy it after getting past that initial part. I mean, off season, that wasn't all the way always enjoyable, and
Gotta love it.
gosh.
You do. Did you know when you were in chemistry and doing all the different things at Pitt, when did you decide like, all right, I'm going to med school, and like that's where my sights are on?
Yeah, I think when I saw a doc at one of our practices, I didn't need to see them, but when they were just at our practice one time, I was like, oh, that's not our athletic trainer. Who is that? And when I learned that was our doctor, because I guess I just wasn't paying attention during pre-participation physicals, or that someone was there. Like, oh, you can be a doc and do sports medicine, or like, what does that look like? So that was kind of me being taking it to another level. I will say that my mom is a physician, so there was some intro to it then, but it was more that, hey, this is here. It's not a pressure. It's just, yep, that's here. But that was when, I believe that was in my junior year, that I remember seeing someone on the sideline, like, oh, okay, yep, I'm already doing science stuff. I'm not going to be a thought I'm not going to be a professor.
And now you're
Here I am, but not going to be a chemistry professor, not going to be a research scientist person. What am I going to do with this chemistry major? Oh, I happen to like anatomy. I love anatomy. I love musculoskeletal anatomy. And then seeing that, I'm like, oh, how can I get to there if I'm going to do medicine? It might not have to be what I thought medicine was. Like, how do I do that? So then that was, and it might have been the summer before going into junior year, and that really solidified it. But that was then, hey, I got to take the MCAT. Like, what things already do I need to do? Already prepared for the science classes, and knowing what my requirements were to graduate with a chemistry major were pretty much the requirements that were needed for medical school. So it didn't have to add much more. It was just that, okay, this is this is kind of where I want to go, with that interest. And after kind of shadowing shadowing with physical therapists, seeing what athletic trainers were doing, but it was very difficult. I don't know how that is done if you're an athletic trainer and actually playing a sport. But seeing those things, but knowing where my interest was, that was kind of the time, like, put into high gear. And
so it's safe to say that you realized that you wanted to be a doctor and sports med doctor at the same time. So it was like, I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to focus on sports.
Yep.
Okay. Because it's always interesting also hearing doctors and like how they get to their focus or how they get to their specialty, you know what I mean, along that path. Because sometimes it's completely different. Or like you said, with your mom being a physician, that making you go complete left away from where she was at. Like, I'm not doing what my mom did. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, but it's, Jason, I mean, like I was like with my dad, like he's a coach. I'm like, I don't want to coach. Like, I see that's tough, man. It's hard. You have to depend on players to listen to you. Like, that's hard. That's a tough thing. I got respect for coaches in that standpoint.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
No, we'll take a quick break and do an LIG read. This episode is brought to you by Blue Chip Academy, the recruiting and football business masterclass, a comprehensive course that walks you through the entire recruiting process and football ecosystem so you can help navigate your family through the recruiting waters and identify the critical factors in making the right decision about your future. And his future, just as important as yours, will show you how to make sure your hard-earned money isn't wasted on programs that won't bring him success. Blue Chip Academy is here for recruiting insights and advice and coaching programs along the way. We have a Blue Chip Academy Blueprints of Success coaching program, along with the football recruiting business masterclass and competitive edge coaching program. So tap in. We'll have the link below, and you guys, we're jumping back in it with Dr. Lailah Issac. So jumping back into it. So now you're in med school and practicing medicine a little bit, if that's where we're at in the story. So you seem to have a very focused career path and aiming to be a doctor. Did you have any doubts along the way? Because, I mean, when you want to be a lawyer, you want to be this. And I remember, I'm saying the doctor thing because I was like 8 years of school. And then it's like, I like learning now. And I was like, oh, that wouldn't have been too. But for you, was there any doubts along the way?
Yeah, there were. So there was, that's a valid point of thinking about the time that it takes from, 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school. But wait, you have to do a residency if you want to practice and see patients. So 4 more years. Oh, wait, you want to do this specialty or you want to do fellowship? But so that can be daunting. My more doubts came from just am I capable to be a good physician? Like, what does that take? Can I do that? So that was more the doubts in that. And then refocusing and thinking, what it will take is making sure what I can control is making sure that I'm studying, making sure that I pass all the tests and exams that are necessary, making sure that I'm learning in those rotations and in those environments, knowing if I want to be sports medicine physician, what residency do I have to do, because you don't just go from medical school to sports medicine. There's some other specialty that has to be done before then subspecializing in sports medicine. So those were the things that I could control or kind of help myself in those. So the doubts did come when if I compared myself to someone else, like, hey, they're this much further than me. Mm-hmm. Oh, but they actually did this rotation already. Like, this is your first time doing this rotation. So why are you comparing yourself to them? They should know more. Right. So those doubts usually became because of either comparison or just thinking like, there is so much to know. How am I going to know so much? But having those people along the way and seeing docs that, like, that's why it's practicing medicine. Like, there's constantly reading, constantly learning. Stuff is changing, and have to be able and willing to change along with that and always be able to learn, because I'm not going to know. I don't know everything. And if I thought I did, then I actually wouldn't be doing a good service for my patients if I thought I knew every single thing about
I never thought about that. It's practicing medicine. Like you said, it's continuously changing and continuously learning. I mean, I think some of your skills from being an athlete and how you talked about just the development, having the eye of the tiger, going through the process helped. Can you take me through that transition a little bit from athlete to pursuing becoming a full-time doctor and how that was for you? Like, was there any difficulties in that?
Yeah. I will say that there's definitely characteristics of just being a student athlete playing at a level where there's a lot of expected of you and the time constraints on it that really lend well to kind of pursuing any professional career, but definitely in medicine. So like you're coachable if you are, but that's usually something that you're coachable, you're able to learn, you're studying. Like as much as I want to study this play, I can redirect that and study this much to knowing this for there. So that transition was more just say, hey, Lailah, you've been here before. It might have been more physical stamina. This is more cognitive stamina, but like you can do that, putting the time in it, making sure that if you don't know something, you're finding the answer. How can I be better? Practicing, preparation, sleep, eating, like all of those things that you need as a student athlete need to be successful through a rigorous medical school path. So that was, and did I always get 8 hours of sleep? Absolutely not. But knowing that like, I got to at least get a solid 4 before this test for that, and the rest that it took to do that. Then transitioning into residency. So now it's, now it's from the medical school, like the studying from the book part of it, now transitioning that into like practical, like with the patient. How does this actually matter what you were studying for this patient that is a human being in front of you, and knowing the different intricacies of that and dealing with someone else, the teamwork that's necessary when you're a physician, working with other healthcare professionals, working with, even with the patient, the education part of it, being able to communicate that to a patient, like those things of that are within sport already, even though thinking about it from okay, this is so I perform well and I perform well for my team. It's okay, now I need to know this so that I can help this person that's in front of me, this patient that is in front of me. Me not knowing this isn't helping them. Me not preparing isn't helping them. Me not preparing, me not practicing, me not showing up to be the best that I can in weights and training isn't helping my team, isn't helping me. So it's just kind of that shift and pivot to, okay, this is a goal right now, and this is a focus right now. And then, yeah, sure, if other wards and stuff like that come along with it, fine. Yeah. But the goal is to make sure that this patient is well taken care of. And and that was kind of that transition. What are there times I'm like, man, I miss sport. Absolutely. Yeah. Did I try to hang on for a little bit after college before medical school? I did when I played football for one season. Like,
oh, you played football?
Like, yep, I'm gonna hang on to this for one more.
So we got to
semester.
jump into it. Doctor that played football, like a woman doctor that played football. That's amazing. I love it. Yeah. And how was that? What'd you think of the game?
That was
football?
Incredible. Like I will say there was part of so this was my spring semester. Soccer was done in the fall. Spring semester, last semester, senior year, before going to medical school in the fall. Played with a women's football team in Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh Passion. And okay. I love learning new sports. And that was one, like, I get it. Like, I can understand why, man, like I wanted to play football all the time. Like, do I still have to finish school? But but I will say though, the balance of still having a sport, it was different, the requirements, because everybody's a full-time job of something and then also playing that sport. It's right. A different age bracket, all different things for there. But learning a new sport, learning from injury, health, and safety aspect of it, of like learning how to tackle, like, man, I love tackling, but learning how to tackle, like that was important. One, fun, one, camaraderie, leadership, advocating for women's sports, like just kind of a different growth than even soccer kind of prepared me for. And then being able to play and just like competing in a whole new sport, like, man, I love that. I
can see you get excited about it, man. That's what football does. It brings all the senses together. Physicality, emotion, you get eyes, a little bit of everything. That's why Football got everybody. They own a couple days of the week on TV, NFL.
Yep.
Because it's fun to play, it's fun to watch, it's exciting, it's the best scripted, it's the best play that you can ever watch.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I will say, like, it, from that time of knowing that, looking back on it, I was like, already accepted going into medical school, but I was like, I want to give this a try. How my college career didn't, end or wasn't how I thought it was going to be, and just wanted to try a new sport, learn something. And it was awesome. It was awesome playing. And then also just the injuries. And now it was kind of different because my perspective was a little different. I'm going into medical school, I'm playing this. And so, like, thinking about, oh, this injury, like, what are they going to do with this injury? I wasn't the best patient, and going into,
asking a lot of questions.
Wasn't always compliant with some of my injuries, which I don't advocate. I don't, condone. But that, knowing that part of it was kind of, as I was going through that, was that, and trying to hang on to that. And there's a part of like, hey, the separation from the sport is gonna happen, and from just sports in general. And maybe I still hang on to it a little bit because I'm a sports medicine doc, but whatever.
No, that's it. Because I love it in football because, like you said, it's a team sport, ultimate team sport. So just a level of transparency. Like when you watch film, like you talk about everything that comes with athletes, I think that's like a skill that we all need to recognize that we have, is like you're always in the feedback loop. Play, get feedback. Play, get feedback. You realize real quick, for me, I realized it was it's a gift to have when I got around people that didn't play a sport. And like anytime that is, someone above them said something, it's like, it was a fight, a tug. I was like, oh, they just get better. Like, oh, I'm happy. All right, boop, 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 boop. And it's like kind of accelerates any gaps that lapse within the athlete or like the tactical or technical skill and where they're at. And it's just like that continuous learning. That's why it caught me when you said practicing medicine. I'm like, that's a perfect way to be practicing life. Like, just keep practicing.
Yeah. Yep. That's what it is.
Like, seriously. So, I mean, I don't know if you touched on it a little bit, but what is your personal mission in practicing sports medicine? Your why in the industry?
So in general, I'm for any of my patients, is I want them to feel educated about their medical condition, and be able to be functional in whatever they're doing. So when I think about sports medicine and dealing with a lot of student athletes, like, it's important to me of the health literacy part of that. They may like say, okay, doctor, you're saying way too much. I don't know this jargon you're talking about, but it's important for me to share what I'm talking about, because it's your body that we're concerned about. And then after you leave the sport, whether it's after college, after it's NFL, whenever, and you're in life, just trying to navigate health system and seeing docs and those things, want you to feel empowered to ask questions about your condition or your body and how that affects those things. So a big part of is health education and like literacy, just regarding kind of regarding injuries and regarding medical conditions within sports medicine. And then also just, I think that's a great question, because I think that's a big part of my mission for that. But then also being a patient advocate is important. So when I think of like sports medicine and then also just my patients in general, like, I'm here to help you get better or help you be the most functional that you can be. You came to me for a reason, and I want to be able to help you with that reason. If I can't, get you to someone that can. So that's still the same when I think of like within sports medicine, in a position where I deal with a lot of potentially younger patient population that may still be in school or still may be striving to compete in sports, like what that then means for them. So just being able to do that. And also the other part of it is, those few times that there's sports medicine, or there's whether it's patients and student athletes or just people that are interested in sports medicine or interested in becoming a physician. I don't know that I will say that it was specifically my mission, but like reach out to me. Like, I don't have all the answers, but like, let's talk about it. I know we're here for your knee. I know that, but you happen to mention that you're interested in medicine. Like, you happen to mention it. So now that you mentioned it, just like, we'll get through this issue with your knee. When you're done with sport or whenever, if you have questions about medical school, email me, let's chat, and leave it at that. So like, that's something that just developing helping to be that for a student athlete and for my patients in general, specifically in sports medicine, and knowing that, and having patients that are kind of are active and may have to be shut down for a little bit, even if they're not playing a sport, if there's job, just how can we help you to be more functional in your day-to-day living.
That's great insight there. I mean, just from the standpoint of, what athletes should be looking for and how to approach it. Because I had two follow-up questions for that. One, whether you from the patient side and the learning side. From the learning side, what do you think an accelerated learning path will look like starting in high school for exposure or didactic learning that lays a foundation to help gain interest in practicing medicine among athletes or just people interested in medicine? Like from your perspective.
I will say, personally speaking, one thing that was really transformative for me was an anatomy class I was offered in high school. I know all high schools might not have that, but being able to learn the muscles, the tendon, like just some sort of intro to that. Yes, it was not on a human anatomy, but it was still learning those. I felt like that opened up just like, okay, this is different than the chemistry, math, and science. Like now I can actually see like muscles. My muscles may be different than what we were dissecting, but okay, this is what this does. This is how it looks. And just knowing the terminology, that is when I kind of really felt like, oh, okay, like this is our body moving. Like this is cool. And I think being able to have those experiences, and if it's not offered, that's okay too. But that's something that if at school able to have an anatomy class or course, that's awesome. Summer immersion programs that are offered to high school students. I know that we have that where I'm practicing now at that university, have summer camps that are like, hey, are you interested in medicine or a healthcare field? Come see what that is about. So I think that's part of exposure when we're thinking about accelerated kind of pathway with that. Mm-hmm. And then in college, if your major doesn't have to be chemistry or biology, it can be nutrition, it can be psychology, it can be exercise science. Know that there's still requirements that will be necessary, that might not be requirements for your degree, but are requirements to get into medical school. But hey, if you're interested in psychology or nutrition's, business for, whatever reason, like that doesn't mean you can't do medicine. You have other prerequisites. So making sure that you're plugged in with a pre-medical or pre-health society when you're in college is important. And it's okay to say that this may be an interest of mine, and not being scared of what like, are you sure you're playing this sport? I don't think so. But I'm just sharing with you this is interest of mine. Can you direct me to who then can share what path I need to take if it's not necessarily going to be you in the situation? So those are, I think, those parts of it. I think if there's opportunities to volunteer in a hospital, it might not be in direct patient care, but just actually kind of being in the hospital, getting a vibe of what that is, doing community service, like seeing that, okay, how do I feel about caring for others or serving others in this way? Medicine is not the only way to serve others and do that. That's just one part of it. But those are all things that can be done at low stress times, potentially, when you're in between high school years or a summer. Sport is still important, but that may be a few hours that you can commit to doing those things. Because why I say all of that too is, one, for your development of if you're interested in these things, but then also down the road, not only for CV or resume, but also solidifying, like, this is something that I've done this, and this way back from high school, to see if this is truly what I want to do. Right. And not doing it, then that's time not having it. And you can make it up, but that's time not having it. So I would say, be intentional with some classes that are being taken, surround being in groups that are pre-medical or pre-health, if that's the direction going, and then just try to find times that, like, it doesn't have to be stressful or take that much time on the earlier years of things. Right. Then it becomes like, okay, I gotta make sure I have these things, but you're not trying to scramble when you're able to get some of those experiences early on.
Yeah, that exposure and building block method, right? Where you just keep getting that information at an early age. Like I was exposed, like I always wanted to be a general manager actually before I wanted to play football because I was a ball boy at Duquesne when I was 7, 8 years old growing up. When I was at Gateway, you know, my dad's the athletic director, so weekends doing the tickets. And so like the business of sport was always kind of my thing. So I always recognized like that's what I wanted to do. So going through, I used to kind of what you're saying is like stack the little experiences up to where you're going through the whole product line. Like what if you're a bottle of Pepsi and you went through the whole thing of Pepsi? You probably know everything that's kind of going on. And you could pick which way to have a critical view on it. So I love that you said that about that accelerated learning path, that you start stacking those blocks from the exposure, even from something as simple as anatomy, where it just gives you that level of exposure. Because I seen guys where they wanted to be like a trainer or something. It's like, I'm going to take kines when they get to college. And they're like, whoa, like, I'm out of here. Because it's like maybe exposed too late. Sometimes you got to get there early to sometimes to you know, really be intrigued by it. So the second part you said that was in the mission, which I love that you said, is the patient-client relation, that you want to take care of the patients from that standpoint. And just coming up in athletics all the time, there's been a little bit of distrust between a team doctor and you, especially when you get to, like I think once you start to get into college, it gets a little different where you're like, man, this dude's not as nice as the doctors. You're trying to push me out there. I don't feel this way. So again, there's a lot of mistrust between players and teams, doctors, from my perspective. Do you think there's any medical professionals with an athletic background that if there were more medical professionals with an athletic background can help mend that trust gap? Or do you think that will always be there with teams, with the distrust between teams and players?
Yeah, I mean, I do think they can help mend there. They're probably always going to be it to some level because even just the distrust with doctors with certain patient populations, you know, already is there. And then if those certain patient populations happen to be the same that are playing a sport, then whether they are playing a sport or not, that mistrust may be there. But I do think that's a great point, that I do think that having that background and knowing that, like, I've been there. My situation is still different than yours. I can't project how I may feel or how you may feel about getting back out there. But like, I try to make it clear of like what we're, you know, managing like expectations of things and just being honest about your feelings. Us as physicians, we take oaths to first do no harm and like doing that. And we have a level of integrity that we, you know, that's the standard. And if you're not, and if we're not doing that as a profession, then yes, that's a problem. Does that mean that everybody's going to trust us? Not necessarily. I do think when there's a background in a sport, doesn't mean that you can't not be successful as a physician or a sports medicine physician if you didn't play every single sport. Right. Like that, no. But knowing that, I think it's different knowing that, oh, hey, my orthopedic surgeon did play lacrosse or did play, you know, football or did play whatever sport it was at this level. It doesn't have to be that, but there might be some level of okay, like they understand something about it, or
perceived
maybe
empathy.
They don't understand, but you feel more comfortable at least sharing that so that then they can put the pieces together. Because, you know, the other part of it, I also get like of times of hiding injuries. Like I get it. And like, sometimes I like, yep, heard you. I'm not doing that, but and saying, yep, okay, I'll do that. Versus, you know, vice versa even on the patient side of it, towards you know, being upfront and honest to the doctor so that they can do whatever parts are there. So I do think that it can help, and it's a different level of comfort. I think also.
I agree. I mean, I've had the experience of playing in the NFL prior to the new CBA, so how even concussions were managed and different things of that nature versus how they were managed after the CBA, and then coming and working at a league office level and dealing with the, you know, head of medicine of the league and how we mandated different concussion things. And, you know, it's kind of shocking sometimes, like prior to the new CBA, you know, it was just like, I mean, I'll tell a story. One time after the Redskins, you know, last play of the game, I hit the tight end, you know, a little dinged up. I guess I got checked out on the sidelines, but I'm in the locker room and I'm like, man, I'm a little dizzy, whatever the case may be. So I go check out the doctor. I'm like, hey man, can you check me out? He's like, we just checked you out 5 minutes ago. You don't remember? And I'm like, no. That was the end of it, right? That was the end of it. Next day, I'm like, hey man, I feel a little type of ways or whatever case may be. And I had a concussion post the CBA when everything was changing. And like, to your point, going to an independent doctor, it was a completely different experience dealing with the concussion, right? It didn't seem like they were trying to hide anything. Not that the doctors were trying to hide anything. It was just more like, how bad is it? The threshold was different, right? Like we talk about dingers or however the mandates were, but just those little things that go through the cracks. And I would say like that did make me mistrust or distrust them a little bit more about different things. And I mean, you see it amongst a lot of athletes in professional sports because it's talking millions of dollars and second opinions and things of that nature. But yeah, I just think it's interesting when you say having an athlete, and you talked about it earlier, when you got hurt, there's a level of empathy or just knowing that someone understands what you're going through. So like just seeing team doctors, coaches as well, right? Because I know coaches put a lot of pressure on doctors, whether it's their job to give them the right report back or make sure is it on the player? Can he really not play, or is it a pain tolerance thing? I mean, that's a big thing in football, whereas a lot of things are pain tolerance, right? Because you're just hitting, everything hurts. So it's just
everything hurts,
right? So I love your answers though, just like with the patient care and from just the level of just continuing to practice and learn medicine, educate, because that's what it's about at the end of the day. So what's the career end goal?
Ooh, so from the other part of my profession is teaching medical students for that. So that eventually would love to be a full professor. I'm assistant professor right now, but that's kind of more on the academic part of it, just so that just going through that process and just staying in academia so that the next generation of doctors that I can be a part of, and if they happen to be athletes, even better. But if they're not, then just that part of helping the next generation, like with continuing to do that part of it. As far as from the clinical standpoint of it, I think just really being able to be a sports medicine physician that can be trusted, and physician that can be trusted and should be trusted, or being able to communicate well. When I say it in goal, I think being able to, at the end of my career, being able to say that, hey, did I always get everything absolutely right? No. But did I always make sure that I was doing what was best, that I thought was best for the patient, and communicated this and did this with the utmost integrity along the way? Like that's my goal every day. And that's my end kind of career goal as well, as far as from that part of things. When I think about like just where I guess I want to be, like I love where I am now. I really do. And I love being able to be in a college setting with sports medicine, because of that transition between being like a kid and transitioning to an adult, of how that matters both with your sport, life, all of those things. And I think it's just kind of a cool environment, but still very competitive, and people being serious about what they're doing. So that's awesome. And so that's something I'll do if, win the lottery. I still want to actually do that, so I actually still want to work. Maybe it won't be the same hours, but I still want to do what I'm doing. And I that's what, again, when I enjoy that and found something that I love that much, and that like when we get off this call, I'll probably go read about something that I saw today. Like I'm excited to go do that. Like it doesn't feel forced anymore. And it feels like, oh, I was excited to go like practice. Like, man, it stunk while I was there, but I know what the end part is and the end goal is for doing that preparation. So yeah.
Well, that is the definition of success. So thank you so much, Dr. Lailah Issac, for giving us the blueprints of success and just everything throughout the medical profession, and just from the building blocks in high school to transitioning to college and transitioning all the way to the professional that you are now as a doctor down in Florida. So just, again, thank you so much. And remember, guys, like manage your focus when you're going through these things. Have a plan when you're going through this process, because it can be tricky. A lot of things come up. There can be naysayers about the process, but do your research and expose yourself to different opportunities, different things that the sports ecosystem can provide you, because you get a critical view. Like Lailah said, she got interested in seeing, even her mom's a physician. She saw a sports doctor at the at practice, and that kind of, you know, sparked her interest to go down the career path that she is on now. So like, there's a lot of things when we just talk about exposure and using this process to get that critical view and really set yourself up for success. So you heard Lailah talk about how excited she is and where she is at the end of the day. And that's what we all want to use this sports ecosystem for, because you put so much time in as an athlete in high school and all those good things. So again, thank you, Dr. Lailah Issac. When you guys get a chance, like and subscribe to the channel. And we, like I said, when Blue Chip Academy is here and you get a chance to check out the football and business masterclass and download the recruiting checklist for all your information, so you're making informed decisions throughout this process. And we're signing out. I guess class is dismissed.